Okay, so all of you have seen the early hands-on videos and first impressions videos of the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, and everyone has told you about the new specifications, which sounds cool, like how the processor's 30% faster and the new Apple Intelligence features. But has anyone told you that the iPhone 16 is basically the iPhone 15 with a few half features that don't entirely work and will only really be useful next year? And has anyone told you that you might be wasting your money in buying one? In this video, let's cut the clutter and discuss what this year's iPhone 16s really mean for you and your hard-earned money. So let's get into it. First, here's the quick summary or TLDR. Apple launched their new iPhone 16s in September 2024, and there are exactly 5 things that you need to know about them which differentiates them from last year's iPhone 15. First, it has some minimal changes to the design. It looks kind of the same as last year and the year before that and the year before that, except now the cameras are vertically aligned. It's like it's fashion which is back in trend again. The iPhone X's design is back on the 16. Second, the cameras are basically the same as last year, except that the ultra-wide now has autofocus, which is also borrowed from last year's 15 Pro, by the way. Third, it's supposedly more durable, though we don't know exactly how much more, and Apple doesn't say much except it's still splash and dust proof on its website, so this feels more like a minor upgrade. Fourth, it has a bigger battery, and again, no specs from Apple at all. It just says 22 hours of video playback versus the 20 we got last year, so I guess it's 10% more. And finally, fifth, 2 new buttons. One of them is the action button that only made it to the Pro models last year, and the second is this thing they call the camera button. After Steve Jobs spent his entire life trying to reduce the buttons on his devices, Apple went ahead and added 2 new buttons in 1 year. Man, he must be rolling over in his grave. And no, I won't say a 6th, which is Apple Intelligence, because technically you can get that on last year's iPhone 15 Pro as well, which I'm going to argue in a separate video is a better phone anyway. And Apple hasn't even released Apple AI yet. And even when they release it, some of their Apple Intelligence features don't even have a release date yet. So Apple AI is basically not even a full feature yet, and you don't need to buy the iPhone 16 Pro to use it. So no, for me it's not specifically a feature of the iPhone 16, even though Apple spent like half that time talking about it. Now most of these are just like meh upgrades, slightly better processor that you won't notice unless like you're a pro gamer, slight better durability, slightly better battery, and a new color or 2. So now you understand why I say it's last year's phone. Literally everything else is the same. But let me explain what I mean when I say it's got a few features that will only be useful next year. There are a few upgrades here that kind of feel like they're from Apple's work in progress lab, which just kind of got slapped on the iPhone 16 because they had to release it now, but actually are only going to be relevant in 2025 on the iPhone 17. I think these features include the new camera button, which needs to be paired with a proper camera upgrade to be justified, which we expect next year on the iPhone 17. Also the 100% better new neural engine for their AI, even though Apple hasn't properly released the AI yet. And then there's the vertically aligned camera for spatial video shooting for the Vision Pro. Hey Apple, before you make features for the Vision Pro, you know there's like 5 people who actually use it, right? And it'll probably take you 1, maybe even 2 more generations of that product with a massive redesign for it to actually become a mass consumer product. Now, let's talk about that shiny new camera button, which should have been paired with a proper camera upgrade, which unfortunately we'll expect only in 2017. The only difference this year on the iPhone 16 versus the 15 last year, as I said, is the ultra-wide lens, which now has autofocus. Else, it's the same setup as last year. Now, first, for the good part, I have to admit, we can all laugh about the fact that it's a button, but if you think about it, in the land of buttons, it's a pretty impressive button. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say. It's crazy how many things you can do with that one button. Let's count. First, you can obviously click it to open the camera, that's one, but you can also kind of use it like a Google Lens to point it to anything you want and figure out what the food you're looking at is, or save details from a poster on the wall, that's 2. You can also use it to change camera settings by sliding your finger on it, that's 3. It also has a shallow press mode that activates things like zooming in and out by swiping, that's 4. And once you get the hang of that light press or shallow press, you can double light press it to bring up another sub menu with the pro camera settings like exposure and focal length and so on. And that's 5 different things you can do with one button. That's impressive value. Maybe even enough to convince the biggest button hater of all time, Steve Jobs. But my question is, who is it for? With a completely new setup, all of them at 48 megapixels, all with improved focal lengths and better zoom capabilities and better field of view and so on. So this button will pair with that amazing new camera setup to make it a true pro camera proposition on the iPhone 17. But this year, it's just the buttons. Will you buy it with just the buttons? Let me know in the comments, and whilst you're there, if you're enjoying watching this video so far, do support a small creator like me by subscribing and liking the video, and also do watch the whole thing. Okay, next, let's talk about Apple Intelligence or Apple's AI. There's 2 things I want to say about it. First, that it's pretty early and not that useful yet. And second, it's not available. Let's talk first about why it's early and not that useful. It has a base layer of AI sprinkled across the OS with features like a magic photo editor, which you can get on the Google Photos app, by the way. The ability to generate texts and emails for you that don't really capture your unique style of writing just yet, and hence aren't very usable. It gives you text summaries on top of email threads, which you can get on Outlook already. And it has some visual intelligence features, which is the Google Lens-like feature that I talked about, where you can point it at anything and it'll tell you what it is or about it. And finally, Siri got AI, which definitely makes it so much better. You can have contextual conversations with Siri where it'll remember what you said. You can prompt it with text and not just have to embarrassingly address Siri in loud voices every single time. But again, you can get all of that on last year's iPhone 15 Pro Max as well. Now, the second thing you need to know is that it's not as available. If you were to buy the iPhone 16 today, it won't have any AI or Apple Intelligence at all. It's going to ship with iOS 18.0, which doesn't support Apple Intelligence, and it's only going to come once 18.1 is released. Now, even when 18.1 is released, not all of the features will be available. You won't get some of the headlining features they announced. For example, that Google Lens-like visual intelligence feature that they launched with that shiny new camera button. No release date yet. That's planned to launch later this year. Also, Apple Intelligence isn't as localized. It's only going to support US English at launch, and localized English in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, and the UK will arrive in December. So if you live outside the US, you're going to have to wait a bit for the localized version. And if you live in India, there's no date yet for a localized version. Now look, don't get me wrong. iPhones are truly amazing phones, and Apple continues to have one of the best smartphones out there this year as well. I just think that it's a strange plug in the gap kind of here, which makes it very hard for me to recommend that you spend your hard-earned money to upgrade to this phone, which barely has anything new, and the only things that are new are barely usable. Instead, if you can, consider holding on till next year. I think it's going to be a great one. Hope you enjoyed the video, and please do support me by liking and subscribing to the channel. And if you don't share your thoughts below, I'll never know how you felt. I won't know what you like and what I should cover next, or even get to know you. So please do say hi below. Look forward to it. See you soon.